So how have you been? Sorry, I've left you high and dry the last 2 weeks, but I was
That's
learning all
okay.
kinds of good stuff.
And every time you want to, every time you go to one of those Joe Dispenza events, you come back and you're on fire and you just light the world on fire. So it's all good.
Yes, it's been kind of really good again. So we'll see. So, and one of the greatest things that Joe Dispenza really teaches you is to give back, because when you have so much, you want to give. And
Right.
I feel like we give to others by sharing our knowledge of luxury real
100%.
estate. So
100%.
So today we are going to be talking about the 12 steps it's an 8-week class, full luxury. Janie used to charge, I think, about $12,000 for this class. It's a really fast-paced class, so put on your sneakers in your head and take lots of notes. And as always, if you have any additional questions and you just want to clarify something, either put it in the chat here or send us a message, and we can get started. And I'm glad we're doing this again, because we did this when we first started, but a lot of people didn't have access to it. And I don't believe we had recorded it at the time, but now we will be recording this session. And so we'll be available to you from the get-go. So anyway, happy February 2022. Janie?
And let me make sure I can share my screen. Hold on. Hold on. I gotta clean this up. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yep, like Catherine said, we're doing an 8-week luxury immersion, luxury real estate immersion class. This is a lot of information. We understand that's why we're recording it, so you can go back and go through methodically week by week. But this is information culled from mine and Catherine's multiple generations in luxury real estate at this point. And the very first starting point is what I find a lot of times we have to kind of break through those myths and alter the mindsets a lot of us have that keep us from getting into luxury real estate or notching it up if we've already sold a few things. So we want to talk about, there's many price points, and sometimes you're going to hear Catherine talk about 10 million, 20 million, $100 million properties. I don't have that in my market. And what might be high in my market might be not even existing in your market. So there's many different price points. So don't compare yourself to what you're hearing other people in other parts of the country or other parts of the world talk about luxury. You're only going to focus on what's luxury in your market. And we're going to help you kind of figure out what that is. Because
I want to just say that, I was in the San Francisco market, then I was in the Los Angeles market, then I am now in the Boston market. And when I see people that I used to work with that are selling $40 million houses and 30 million and 25, just as a matter of course, believe me, I sit there going, oh my gosh, because now my market is, 3 million is luxury. So anyway, so just want to let you know that.
So don't compare.
Sorry.
I was going to say, don't compare. Nobody should be comparing what they, first of all, don't compare what you see on social media. Don't compare what you see in other markets. The only person you need to compare yourself is who you were last week or who you were last month or who you were last year. That's
exactly. Great advice.
Right. And as Catherine mentioned, we're going to be going very fast. So these videos and all the other videos for you in Game Changers are always available in the guide section. If you go to Game Changers and go to guides, you're going to see the guide on working with social media, on working with buyers, working with sellers, agent attraction, and of course, mine and Catherine's luxury course. So you have all those to go back to and redo at your own pace. And part of that is this course is not in any sequential order. So if you see a title and you really love that because it's about sphere of influence, do that one first. If you see it and it's about farming, do that one first. Do everything at your own pace. And then finally, with any course, you need to act. So many of us become addicted to education and think just taking the courses, watching the videos is what's going to actually implement change in our life. And it doesn't. What makes the change is actually taking action. So don't get overwhelmed with everything we're going to tell you in the next 8 weeks. Take it down, chunk it out, and do little by taking action and moving yourself forward. I have this is a picture of a burning boat. I believe strongly in burning your boats when you take on something new, meaning you're going for it. You're 100% committed to it. You're not leaving yourself an exit path, but you're actually going for it, and it's going to happen because when you go to take the island and you burn the boat, you have to take the island. So just approach whatever you're learning in that same way. And like I said, we're going to be doing this immersion style. So we really want you, just like if you go to Berlitz to learn a language, they start speaking to you in the language immediately because that's their teaching method. So we're going to really kind of get into luxury real estate in kind of an immersive way. We're going to break the old mindsets. We're going to kind of do it like boot camp, where we're breaking out the old you that might be intimidated or might feel uncomfortable with luxury. And we're going to pop you out at the other end, a fresh new luxury recruit. And if you're already doing luxury, we're going to help you get to the next highest level or more consistent luxury, whatever that is for you.
And by the way, even though Janie and I are both luxury agents, we help each other all the time. Even through this class, you can always learn something and elevate your game.
Always. And that's the thing, Catherine, you're teaching all the time is really make great connections and great relationships with your local real estate agents. Regardless of brand, regardless of everything, they're your allies. You get there together, your partners to get there together. So keep that in mind. Catherine teaches this all the time, and it's never more important than luxury real estate, where you come in contact with those agents much more frequently because there's fewer and fewer of them doing real estate at the higher price points. And then we talked about getting a buddy. It's one thing again to watch all this training, but if you're not buddying up with somebody to hold you accountable for taking some action, you're going to end up having 8 weeks of education and no action because we get so busy with selling real estate that we don't take time to work and build on our real estate career. So we don't want that to happen to you too. And then the final thing, I think it's always important to dig into your why. Like, why do you want to raise your average price point? Why do you want to get into luxury? What's that going to do as far as maybe freeing up some of your time? What's that going to do to building better relationships with agents? And if you're doing agent attraction, luxury agents, if you're able to attract them to EXP, they're much more likely going to cap than non-luxury agents. So that's another win-win. Like Catherine was my very first recruit at EXP, and I think she capped in like a millisecond. And so I don't have to worry about any of my luxury recruits capping because they normally do that in a handful of transactions. So let's get into the myths of luxury real estate. And I think the number one thing is all the people who become addicted to watching those real estate TV shows like Millionaire Real Estate, Selling Sunset, blah, 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 blah. Almost all of that's fake. I'm sure you didn't know that. I'm sure you couldn't guess that, but those are scripted. Those are real estate agents, but a lot of times just to keep the show going, they're finding non-buyers to work with them in the guise of a buyer, or they're having clients whose houses, like more than 50% of it's fake. So what you see on TV is not reality as far as selling luxury. So get that out of your head. And then the next myth is people think, oh, it's easy. It's not easy. No real estate is easy. It's different. It's enjoyable, but it's not easy. It's also not easy to sell 100 properties a year like you often have to on lower price point houses. It's like pick your poison, right? But it takes work and it takes consistency and it takes a lot of additional education and knowledge on top of regular real estate. Go ahead, Catherine.
Sorry.
I said, I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, no, I was just like, just saying yes. No, I was just agreeing with you. No, but it's not easy. And you have to really put yourself out there first. And when you're saying that, hey, I'm a luxury agent, people really treat you differently. So you're going to have to perform and you feel like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know if I want to put myself out there. But like Janie said, the burning boat, put that photo
Burn
in
your
your
boat.
office, wherever. Because if your boat is burning, you can't leave the island. And so
You
in
can't
order
leave the
to,
island.
if you're going to be, if you're going to be a luxury agent, just know you have nowhere else to go because now you've already told everybody. And you should tell
Okay.
everybody.
The next myth is a lot of people somehow think that luxury agents are like born being luxury agents. They think that they went right from real estate school to selling multi-million-dollar properties. That's not the case. I think if you look around to anybody who's selling luxury, the likelihood is they worked their way up because they build on their knowledge as real estate agents. They work their way up. It's not that they have some innate, some special quality, anything different than you. They have a real estate license, you have a real estate license. They've just spent the time to hone their knowledge and their skill and their competence and their confidence and their polished presentation to work their way up into the higher price points. But it's not anything that they have that you don't have. You have exactly what you need, your real estate license. Everything else you can acquire, you can build, you can grow. Another thing is sometimes people think luxury real estate agents make more money. And that's true, but there's a real caveat with that. When you're selling, let's call it bread and butter real estate, that can often be very predictable and you normally have a lot lower expenses associated with the sale of bread and butter real estate. And it's predictable. So you have a certain amount of deals you're doing every month and it's easy. The higher and the higher and higher you get up in price point, the more unpredictable on a monthly basis your closed transactions become. So you could go a couple months no sale and then a big sale, a couple more months. And if you don't have the money in the bank to kind of ride out those waves or the nerves to ride out those waves, that can be very stressful. And you have a much, much higher expense on the listing side for a luxury listing than you do on a bread and butter. And what I mean by that is you're normally spending a lot more on photography, a lot more on video. You're probably doing some print ads. Not that print ads, by the way, are actually going to bring buyers. They often don't, but your luxury sellers often expect it. So it's part of the whole part and parcel package of servicing your luxury seller. You might be holding very nice events, not just a broker open or a caravan, but a whole event with, maybe a quartet there and catered and a sommelier and all these other things. So yes, you make more money per deal, but you have a lot fewer deals and a lot higher expenses. So you have to approach it in a business way to make sure you're not just thinking, oh, it's just that much more money. It's that much more money, but sometimes it's spread out over a longer time. And there is a higher percentage of your commission is going to the marketing of that listing. So just make sure that you pay attention to that all. Another thing is people often think that luxury buyers and sellers are different, like there's some different human species. They're not. They're just like me and you. They're humans. They might be at a very successful point in their life because of their careers or because of their families or something like that, but they're still humans. They have their pets and their children, and they have their own stresses to manage and their own emotions and everything like that. But at the end of the day, they're just humans. They have more of a certain asset in wealth than many other people, but they're humans. So it's important to remember that and not let yourself be so put off by them that you treat them like an alien species, because that's not going to get you the feeling of confidence from the buyer or seller if they see that you're like so goo goo gaga. They want somebody confident that's going to be able to represent them on a big transaction.
And with that, you have to remember that they're successful at what they do. but they're not successful in real estate. So you have to control that process, and you have to let them know that you have the capability to transact better than they could on their own. And they're really looking at you to be the expert in that. Sometimes their ego does get in the way, and they think because they're an investment banker, they're a great negotiator, that they can come in and tell you how to negotiate. And you have to let them know that what works for them is not necessarily what's going to work in getting them their dream home. So you really have to command the relationship. You have to really learn that you're providing a phenomenal service for them, and that they have to listen to you, and you have to be able to control your client.
Yeah. And that leads us right into the thing saying, another myth is to think that they're all difficult. Some generally people with a lot of money are very successful at whatever they did. So they command a high level of professionalism, but they expect that from everybody they deal with, whether it's their attorney or their CPA or their financial advisor. And so you have to be at that level to be able to provide that, because they do trust in you. And also I found for the most part, luxury deals are easier, especially than first-time homebuyer deals, where that purchase is the biggest thing these people have ever done in their lives. They maybe haven't gone through a real estate transaction, so you're having to kind of educate them on the real estate process as well. By the time you get into luxury, you're getting with very savvy buyers and sellers of real estate, very normally calmer, and it's generally less. And then the higher and higher you go, the less you even deal with financing at all. And as we know, when somebody's buying a property finance, a lot of times they're kind of at the edge of what they can afford, and we know how rocky that can make your transaction. So that's another kind of plus with dealing with the higher end. So these are things that I have heard. I managed a very large Sotheby's firm for 4 years, and I had everybody tell me everything under the sun, why they felt it was an innate quality in them that kept them from entering luxury real estate. And I would guess that if you're not in luxury real estate and you're interested, you might have said one or two of these things yourself. And I'm going to read through them. And then in the subsequent slides, we're really going to break it down about why these are all just not true. None of these are barriers to entry into selling luxury real estate. But one thing I hear people say all the time is, I'm not fancy enough. They're meaning I don't have a fancy enough car. I don't have fancy enough clothes. I don't have a fancy enough purse or anything like that. Or they say, I don't come from the right socioeconomic background. They're thinking that people only buy luxury real estate from somebody who comes from a luxury real estate background, and they kind of cut themselves off thinking that's not even accessible to me because that's not my background. Or one thing I hear all the time is there's a dominant agent. There's one or two dominant agents and they get all the business. There's no more business for anybody else. Also not true. And then somebody,
Janie, somebody actually put that question in the chat.
About the dominant agent?
Yes. So they said, and we're going to go into this, but basically that they're in a market where there's a dominant agent, multi-generational dominant agent with a luxury brand. And how can she compete against that? And just so you know, I started my first real estate gig in San Francisco Bay Area where there were multi-generational agents, and then didn't know anybody, then moved to LA where I didn't know anybody, and incredibly successful. Again, competed against some people who'd been doing this for years, and then again, multi-generational families who've been doing it, and then moved to Boston, again, not knowing anybody. And Boston is like, the epitome of the work with the family. Like, you cannot break into this market. It's crazy, but I'm doing incredibly well. And I have in all three areas. So it's a myth. People want a good person. They don't care about all of that other stuff. We live with it every day, but they don't. We think that, of course, they want so-and-so because they're all over, but most people don't even know who these people are. Like, very few, maybe 10% of people know who these agents are. So you can absolutely come in and make a name for yourself. And we'll
Yeah,
teach you
when
that.
yeah, next week's session on farming is all about how to break down your myth surrounding the dominant agent. And I think we're going to talk about that in a few slides from now. But same thing, Catherine, when I moved to a new market, I moved to Jacksonville and then I moved to St. Augustine. Everybody teased me. They're like, oh, this is an old boys network. You're never going to get anywhere. And it was my goal to become the top 10 in our MLS within 3 years. And I did it within 2. And my owner brokers, by the way, were selling owner brokers. They owned the Sotheby's. They sold as a team, husband and wife and the daughter. And they had been in the business for 26 years. And I outsold them within 2 years. And they owned the Sotheby's. So it's a myth. And we're going
And
to
she
bust
moved
through
there.
all those. And I moved there. I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody. And I did it in 2 years from a cold start. So we're going to break all those myths down so that you don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's just water under the bridge. The next thing people are always like, I've never sold luxury before. I'm never going to be able to get into luxury. Every single person selling luxury now didn't sell luxury at some point. We didn't even have licenses at some point. We were brand new baby real estate agents too at some point. It's just an evolution. And we're going to go through all of that. And then I hear people, oh, I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that, I have an accent, I don't, whatever. We're going to break down all these myths today and maybe even next week. And then the other one I hear all the time is, well, my sphere is not rich, so I don't have anybody to sell to. It doesn't matter. You build your sphere. You create your sphere with the efforts that you do. And that's exactly what Catherine did when she moved to LA and San Diego, was it? Or
Oh, from
Diego,
San
right?
Francisco to LA, from
San
LA to
Francisco
Boston.
LA,
Yeah.
and in Boston. And the same thing for me in Jacksonville and then St. Augustine. We didn't know anybody. We created our business, and we're going to teach you how to create your business too. So I want to break down the whole fancy car thing. And this is more important and less important in different parts of the country. Miami, where I was, it was like ridiculously, people thought important, agents thought important. For the most part, as long as your car is not banged up and it's kept clean, that's what matters. There were times where I actually parked my car around the corner when I was working with sellers and buyers, and I would walk, but I got around it. And if you have buyers coming in and out of town and they're luxury buyers and you don't have a great car to put them in, you can rent a nice car for the weekend. So it's not that thing, and it's definitely not a kind of thing to make yourself think I can't get into real estate because my car's not nice enough. Same thing
Also,
with clothes.
you can get a limo. And I know that sounds very extravagant, but the great thing about getting a limo, you can even get an Uber driver in a car. You get a chance to talk to the clients instead of trying to figure out where you're going. And especially in my case, where I was not from the area, I was not very good at finding wherever I was going. But so having a driver, then it puts you at a whole different sphere as well.
Yeah, I think Uber, like Uber X or Lyft, that's a great option if you're concerned at all about that. But again, for the most part, if your car is well maintained and it's clean and it looks good, they're not expecting you to be driving around in super fancy cars. I wouldn't even let that be a thing. Same thing about where you live. Generally, people are not asking you where you live. They're not coming to your house to buy real estate. You're going there. So again, that's that. The one thing you do have to have is manners and etiquette. You
Yes.
do need to be polished. You need to be polished. You should be able to speak comfortably. It doesn't mean with or without an accent, but if you're uncomfortable because maybe your speech isn't that polished, you can work on that. You can go to Toastmasters. If you need to brush up on your manners and etiquette a little bit, you can do that. Free online courses, especially if you're going to restaurants and things. You do need to be polished as far as that goes.
Yes. And I have to tell a story because that's the fun part about this class. So I was taking a luxury buyer who was here, and then after, anyway, they were interviewing a couple. They went with me, and they told me the other people that they had gone out with, it was a husband and wife team, and so they sat in the front, the client sat in the back. And they said that they fought nonstop. Can you imagine? That is not good manners, folks. So, it's these simple things, but people don't realize that you're not with your family. You're not with whoever. Keep your dirty laundry to yourself. And if you need to go, smack your husband around later, do it, but don't do it in front of the client.
One example I wanted to give, when I used to be a contractor many years ago as a general contractor, and I worked doing construction of 2 high-end law firms in Miami. One was like overly ornate and fancy, and one was very understated, because the client, they were both equally successful, but the clients that they worked with were different types of clients. So the overly ornate and successful one, they were the kind that worked on contingency, for like slip and fall accidents, or mesothelioma, different things like that. So they wanted to be overly ornate because they wanted to show how successful they were to their clients. And then the other one was like more of a corporate attorney. So they were very nice, but much more kind of subdued, because they didn't want their clients to think they were overpaying to pay for this very fancy office. So fancy is all kind of relative to the relationship with the people and who the people are. Here in St. Augustine, where I am, people are a lot more subdued. They're not overly fancy. In other parts of the area they are, but there's lots of ways. If you're worried about your clothing, there's lots of ways that you can dress very nicely without spending a fortune. I'm telling you, thrift shops, consignment shops, online, Etsy, Poshmark, even Rent the Runway, different things like that, can give you that confidence you'll have great clothes, but not spend a ridiculous amount of money.
The most important thing is to keep your shoes clean and nice, and make sure they're not scuffed. Everybody, I'm telling you, in the luxury world, they look at your shoes. So make sure you have really nice shoes. Clean.
Yeah. And then I hear this all the time. People say, I'm not from that socioeconomic background. Catherine, I don't know your background, but I'm not either. I came from a nice family, had a nice education, but I didn't come from this giant multi-million-dollar background. And again, people don't really ask that. They don't ask that. That's just not their concern.
And by the way, even if you are that kind of background, nobody cares. If anything, sometimes they think if you are from that socioeconomic background, that you won't do as good a job for them. Right. And so that's a handicap too. So no one needs to know your situation. That's private. You're professional.
Right. One of the biggest things I found, because again, I managed a very large, successful luxury franchise. And we had people who came from backgrounds of means, and we had people who didn't come from backgrounds of means, almost without fail, except the exception of 1 or 2 people. The people who came from that very wealthy background, they just didn't have the drive. They really didn't. They didn't need to work. It was kind of fun for them, but they didn't have this massive drive for uber success. And then the people I worked with who were DJs, or they came over to the United States literally rowing a boat, or they were waitresses and bartenders, or they grew up in an impoverished background, or they had the hunger and the drive, and they normally made the most successful luxury real estates, because they had the hunger and the drive. So whatever your background is, wherever you came from, you have what you need to be successful, and that's a license in real estate. It's really important to let that sink in. I think we're going to have to do this in 2 sessions, Catherine, because we're already at the half-hour mark, and we've got way more to share with you.
Yes.
So
we had this is the way we're going to do it. Every class is going to be in 2 sessions. So don't ever think that, we're going to be able to get through 1 class. But I think it's more important to go through this properly, and so you understand it, and just know you can ask questions. We are here for you. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We will see you next week, and I hope we gave you some food for thought.
Yeah, and don't forget to check the guides to see the past trainings.
Yes. All right.
Okay,
bye, everybody.
Bye.